Hi everyone, I'm Jake Harrison. I'm with VS, and today we have a very special guest, Owen Hope, who is a photographer in St. Andrews. So Owen, maybe would you like to give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
Yeah, well, first of all, cheers for having me, Jake. It's nice of you guys to ask me to come along. I'm a student here. I study a joint honours in social anthropology and geography. I'm in third year. And yeah, I'm just going to speak a little bit about some of my work today with Jake.
So my first question, as VS is a kind of a music and fashion collective, I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite fashion piece right now, and maybe tell us the story behind it.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite a difficult question. I admit to not being particularly fashion-minded. The vast majority of my pursuits are kind of, quite active, quite outdoor. So my wardrobe looks a bit like that. However, last year I turned 21, and I was given a kilt as a gift. So, a kilt's a very important piece of clothing in Scotland. So I went with an Argyle jacket rather than the Prince Charlie jacket. So I think that's got to be my favorite sort of fashion piece right now.
That's definitely a great answer, very traditional. So the first question I wanted to ask about photography was, what kind of photography appeals to you the most?
So I think I'm definitely most attracted to documentary photography. It's a very broad field, but there's definitely quite a big rift between those of us who do it best and like the rest of us. So one guy who definitely stands out, he's an Irish documentary photographer called Matthew McMahon.
Mhm.
So he works photographing a lot of conflict in Syria, especially in Raqqa. His stuff's very compelling, it's very moving. I think he's a good example of somebody who is using a camera to expose some very real things in life that don't usually get a lot of limelight in the mainstream press.
Obviously, documentary photography is a very broad genre of photography. So what style do you think appeals to you the most? Like I see on your page, you have like urban photography, you have like travel photography and stuff like that. So what do you think is your favorite kind of style of that kind of photography?
Yeah, so in terms of my style, perhaps, and the things I pursue myself, there isn't like a clear chronology to it, but I do mostly enjoy photographing, people doing, maybe improbable things, maybe broadly extreme sports, perhaps. So I've had some good days, shooting some free runners, highliners, so like, slackliners, way up in the sky, lots of climbing. It's really good fun, like designing and pulling off photographs like these, that are unlikely to be done before.
Okay, so just like extreme sports and just photographing iconic moments.
Well, yeah, I think that's well put. Definitely iconic moments. I think also it's generally very difficult to put yourself in the shoes of a lot of these people. So you see someone climbing a really hard climbing route, or walking like a really like crazy high line, and it's very hard to look at the picture and relate to it at all. But I think like one challenge I like kind of as a photographer is trying to make it a bit more relatable, perhaps making it a bit easier for people to sort of see through the image and see what it might be like to be doing it themselves.
So, I mean, with the iconic moments, like obviously as a photographer, you're always on the lookout for iconic moments. So you probably have a bunch of iconic moments you can like draw from and say, well, yeah, this is my favorite photo. So do you have a favorite photo, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's always pretty impossible to try and pick out one. I'm like made so aware of my indecisiveness when it comes to this kind of question, but I probably thought about it a bit, and I can pick out a favorite. So this image here actually is a festival called Theyyam. I took it in South India, in Kerala, when I was working there for the first time in 2017. I was working alongside an Indian photographer who now is quite a successful commercial photographer, doing a lot of kind of maybe more corporate interior kind of stuff. But this festival was her project that she headed, and it was part of her heritage. I mean, as you can see, it's so far removed from anything that anyone really usually grows up with, especially like in the Highlands of Scotland. And it's something like I'm unlikely to ever forget, even if I wanted to. So yeah, it definitely stands out. It stands out as it stands alone in terms of what other photographs I've taken.
I mean, definitely, like with the context, like obviously it adds a lot to the image, especially coming with your story as well. Oh, but I mean, obviously, like there are probably a lot of people watching this who are kind of, amateur photographers. They're just trying to get into the craft photography. Do you have any kind of if you could go back in time, what would you tell like a younger Owen? Would you say maybe don't do this, maybe don't do that? Like what kind of suggestions would you have?
One thing is like everyone says this all over the internet, but I think it's important not to like look at your gear as the limitation.
Mm-hmm.
I think like especially if you're on Instagram, you know, like there's all these big names in photography, and there's all these very famous photographers on Instagram like posting incredible stuff with like thousands and thousands of pounds of gear. I think try not get too caught up on that. But I also think on a similar note, try not look at these, you know, top level professionals and just try and take those exact same pictures. Like it's very hard to lose a bit of individuality by looking at other people's stuff and trying to do it. I think I spent quite a lot of time doing that. You know, there's a lot of photographers that I was a big fan of when I was younger, and I would just want to shoot what they're shooting. You know, I'd want to try and get a picture like that. And often you spend a lot of time chasing other people's photographs. Maybe isn't such a good thing.
Right. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Just as an outro question, I obviously, like I said before, VS is like a fashion and music collective. So I wanted to ask you, just as an outro question, what are some of the music artists that you're listening to right now, and maybe you want to give a shout out to?
So last summer I did a shoot with a young artist in the Highlands. Her name is Katie Gregson McLeod. You know, she's like me, a young artist from the Highlands of Scotland. You know, trying to get her stuff out there. So I thought I'd give her a big shout out. I shot most of the images for her advertising campaigns, her songs on Spotify. I think she's got a pretty big future ahead of her if she keeps going the way she's going. So big shout out to her.
Okay, great. Are there any pages you want to shout out? I mean, obviously you have your page, owenhopephoto.com, which I would highly recommend people who are watching this go have a look at. But are there any other pages you want to have a shout out?
I think it's on my website. During lockdown last year, I started a small part of the website where there's I just chuck loads of photos up. I think like quite often one of the problems with like, you know, a website or even Instagram is you only ever kind of see the bit like what maybe someone thinks are their better work. You know, I take plenty of bad photographs, and like, you know, like there's so many days we'll go out and spend a whole day shooting and they'll be bad. And quite often they're some of the more fun ones. So I've got a bit there where I lob a ton of stuff. I lob a ton of stuff up, a bit of an insight into a bit more behind the scenes. It's a bit less refined, so that's good fun.
Well, I think we've talked about everything. So I just wanted to thank Owen again for coming on and doing the interview. I think we got some very interesting insights into the art of photography. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.